Shalom, welcome back. So pay your taxes to Caesar. Is this what Yeshua meant? So in Matthew 22 and Luke 20, there's this exchange between Yeshua and the Pharisees. It says, the Pharisees went and took counsel how they might entrap him in his talk. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. So right off the bat, you can see that this is a setup. This is not an innocent interaction. The Pharisees are not coming in good faith. They're coming with the intention of trapping him. In Luke 20, starting at verse 20, says basically the same thing. Keeping a close watch on him, they sent spies who pretended to be righteous to catch him in a word in order to deliver him to the rule and the authority of the governor. So the first thing we need to recognize here is the group asking the question were spies who pretended to be righteous for the intention to catch him in a word so that they could turn him into the Romans. The spies were trying to place Yeshua in a catch-22 because they knew that if he were to say that they should not pay tribute to Caesar, he could be tried for sedition by the Romans. But if he said that they should pay tribute to Caesar, the Jews would stone him for being a false Messiah. Yeshua knew what they were trying to do. We should recognize that just because Yeshua is responding to a question, he doesn't always necessarily answer the question being asked. And sometimes we end up confused because we don't realize what he did. In this instance, what he said was so clever that it caused his adversaries to fall silent. In fact, it was so clever that neither Caesar nor most believers understand his answer to this day. So, now that that's being said, of course, notice they brought the Herodians along too. The Herodians were the agents of Rome. So they have the ruling authorities of the area there with them, and they're asking him about paying taxes. The whole situation's a setup, right? Rabbi, we know that you're honest and teach the way of God in truth no matter whom you teach, for you aren't partial to anyone. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Yeshua perceived their wickedness and said, why do you test me, hypocrites? Show me the tax money. And they brought him a denarius. So let's pause here for a minute. Because if we were there and we knew what the coin was that he was holding, we would have a bit of insight into this exchange that is not apparent to us 2,000 years later. The coin he was holding would have been a Roman denarius and would probably have been the one minted from 14 to 37 AD, which featured Tiberius Caesar. So the front would have Tiberius Caesar with the inscription Tiberius Caesar Divini Augusti Filius Augustus, or Tiberius Caesar, son of the divine Augustus. The back has Livia with the inscription Pontifex Maximus, or high priest. Since the father of Tiberius, Octavian Augustus Caesar, had been declared a god by the Roman Senate, Tiberius was essentially claiming to be the Son of God. So you have this situation where Yeshua, the literal Son of God, is standing there. Someone's holding up this coin of this human being, this Roman emperor, claiming to be the Son of God. And he's being asked if it's lawful to pay taxes to this false Son of God. Also, so that we understand the cultural significance of what's going on, Hippolytus, in his refutation of all heresies, said the Essenes have, in the lapse of time, undergone divisions, and they do not preserve their system of training after a similar manner, inasmuch as they have been split into 4 parties. One of those 4 parties was the Nazarenes. So you can think of the term Essene as like a blanket term for these groups, these 4 sects within the first century who had similar beliefs, but they were slightly different. But they were made up mostly of Israelites. Josephus tells us that the Essenes were those who were Jews by birth. That's his words, the way he described them. So in other words, they were ethnically Jewish. The Pharisees and the Sadducees were made up of Edomites and Greeks. There were probably some Israelites in there too, of course, but they were not this cohesive, ethnically Israelite group like the Essenes were. So the Essenes would have been the true Israelites. He says, for some of them discipline themselves above the requisite rules of the order, so that even they would not handle a current coin of the country, saying that they ought not to carry or behold or fashion an image. Wherefore no one of those goes into a city, lest by doing so he should enter through a gate, at which statues are erected, regarding it a violation of law to pass beneath images. So Yeshua is standing there, and he's surrounded by common people, and then there's a group of Pharisees that were challenging him. So he's standing there surrounded by people who would have been Essenes, because the Essenes were kind of the common man on the street type of people in that day. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees were kind of the ruling religious elite. And they're challenging Yeshua. And so Yeshua is turning it back on them, because he knew that he's essentially using this coin to accuse the Pharisees of idolatry. So his next move, they're holding the coin up, and he asks them, whose is this image and inscription? In other words, is this Caesar's image or is it God's image? And they say to him, Caesar's. And then he says to them, render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. Give Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and God what belongs to God. When they heard it, they marveled and left him and went away. So he shut them up. So what did he do to shut them up? Well, the answer is obvious. Caesar, a man claiming to be God, that's prima facie evidence of blasphemy. And what do you render to a man committing blasphemy? A man claiming to be the Son of God. Well, what did they render to Yeshua when he claimed to be Son of God? John 19:6, when therefore the chief priests and the officers saw him, they shouted, saying, Crucify, crucify. And Pilate says to them, Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no basis for a charge against him. And then the Judeans said, We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. Now wait a minute, were they saying that about Caesar? Were they demanding that Caesar be stoned to death or crucified? No, they're not applying that law to Caesar. They're only applying it to Yeshua. The thing they should have rendered to Caesar, if he's claiming to be God, is death. The spies fell silent because these words were as much an indictment against the religious leadership as it was against Caesar. So now you know the truth of what Yeshua was really saying. And to this day, Caesar himself thinks that Yeshua was telling you to pay your taxes. And in reality, he was saying that they should be holding Caesar accountable for his blasphemy. Similar things are said in John 10:30. When Yeshua says, I and the Father are one, the Judeans want to stone him. And they say the reason they want to stone him is because him, being a man, made himself God. And then Yeshua says, Do you say of him who the Father sanctified and sent into the world, you blaspheme because I said I'm the Son of God? So the one who is actually sanctified by the Father, they want to stone him for claiming to be the Son of God. But this Roman pagan who is coming into their land and taking over and declaring himself to be God, they don't apply the same judgment to him. There's a similar thing going on in Revelation 13, speaking about the mark of the beast. It says, He causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave, to be given marks on their right hands or their foreheads, and that no one would be able to buy or sell unless he has that mark. The name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. He who has understanding, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. So no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. Well, how can you buy or sell if you're not using money? It's not a chip in your hand. It's talking about the currency itself. No one could buy or sell unless he had the mark. It's the number of a man. His number is 666. Okay, well, which man? At the time that Revelation was written, Nero was Caesar. So if you write Caesar Nero in Hebrew and you add up the value of all the Hebrew letters, it adds up to 666. That's the mark of the beast, right there on your screen. The coinage of Caesar Nero. In fact, when Jerome translated the Latin Vulgate, translated the Greek into Latin, he changed the mark of the beast number. If you read the Latin Vulgate, it says the mark of the beast is 616. The reason is because when you write Caesar Nero in Latin, the letters in Latin add up to 616. So Jerome adjusted that so that it would fit the doctrine or the theology that's being shown. He changed it to fit the situation so that Latin readers could understand what the mark of the beast was. And here we are, 1,700 years later, and we don't remember what the mark of the beast is. So we think it's some microchip and Bill Gates is going to inject us with the mark of the beast or something, but it's not. It's talking about the coinage that was in use in Judea in the first century. So what's the mark of Yahweh? Well, Deuteronomy 6:6 says, "These words which I command you this day shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall bind them for a sign on your hand." Where's the mark of the beast? In your hand. "And they shall be for frontlets between your eyes." What's between your eyes? Your forehead. A mark of the beast on your hand or your forehead. Well, there's also a mark of Yahweh, and it goes on your hand or your forehead. So what's the mark of Yahweh? His commands. Doing the will of the Father. Doing the will of the Father is the mark of Yahweh. Declaring Caesar to be God, that's the mark of Caesar. The mark of the beast. So I pray that this has been a blessing for you and given you a few things to think about. And I bid you shalom.